Cecilia.
Thank you, Sarah. Two questions, two topics, if I may. Does the president believe Roy Moore's accusers, and does he think Roy Moore should drop out of this race?
Look, the president believes that these allegations are very troubling and should be taken seriously, and he thinks that the people of Alabama should make the decision on who their next senator should be.
So that's a no, he thinks Roy Moore should stay in?
Look, the president said in his statement earlier this week that if the allegations are true, then that Roy Moore should step aside. He still firmly believes that. Major.
How would the president like to see that truth proven?
Look, I'm not going to get into and litigate back and forth, but the president's been clear that if any of these allegations are true, allegations that he takes very seriously, finds very troubling, if those do happen to be true, then he should do the right thing and step aside.
Does the president believe the accusations themselves, that is to say the women themselves and their own credibility, can be established outside of them making these allegations? What's the mechanism by which the president would be satisfied that the allegations are true?
Look, I don't think the president's laid out what the mechanisms are. That should be determined possibly by a court of law. But that's also something in a decision that the people of Alabama need to make, not the president, whether or not they want Roy Moore to support them in the Senate.
Sarah, Ivanka Trump says that she has no reason not to believe the women who come forward. Does the president disagree with her position?
Look, the president's not disagreeing with anybody. He's saying that he finds the allegations to be extremely troubling. He doesn't know any more than you do on this fact, other than that these are something that should be taken very seriously, and that the people of Alabama should be the ones to make the decision on whether or not to support Roy Moore.
Matthew. Thank you, Sarah. Having the information that we have and the information that the people of Alabama have, would President Trump vote for Roy Moore?
The president's not a voter in Alabama, so
I know he's not, but he endorses candidates all the time and states that he's not a voter, and he says, I would vote for this person or I wouldn't. Would he vote for Roy Moore?
I haven't asked him if he would vote for Roy Moore.
Would you get back to us on that?
John?
Thank you, Sarah. A number of Republican senators have pulled their endorsement for Roy Moore. They've urged him to step aside. Senator Shelby said he wouldn't even vote for him. He would write someone in on the ballot. Senator Cruz has pulled his endorsement. The president is not only President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, he's also leader of the Republican Party. Why won't he weigh in on this? Why won't he take the same type of strong position that these other Republican senators have taken on Roy Moore?
Look, the president supported the decision by the RNC to withdraw resources from this race, but feels it's up to the people of Alabama to make the decision. I don't have anything further to add on that front. James.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't mean by asking about this to suggest it's necessarily the most important thing facing the country right now, but it happens to be my story assignment for the day. You say that the president finds these allegations against Mr. Moore, Judge Moore, to be very troubling, extremely troubling, etc. As we all know, the president faced a number of similar allegations, or somewhat similar allegations, during the course of the campaign, and he vigorously denied them. But I wonder what you would assert to be the difference between the two situations, such that on the face of things we should find one set of allegations very troubling, and on the other we shouldn't pay attention to them at all, or we should totally disbelieve them.
Well, I think the president has certainly a lot more insight into what he personally did or didn't do, and he spoke out about that directly during the campaign, and I don't have anything further to add beyond that. Jim?
On Roy Moore, would the president campaign with Roy Moore?
Not that I'm aware of.
And can I ask you a follow-up? Do you think he's a creep?
Do I?
Yeah.
Look, I don't know Roy Moore. I haven't met him in person, so I wouldn't be able to respond to that. Kristen?
Does the president think that Roy Moore is qualified to serve in the U.S. Senate?
Look, the president, as I've said about 7 or 8 times now, thinks that this is a decision for the people of Alabama to make.
Sarah, we've heard from you. Sarah, we've heard from you, and we've heard from Ivanka on this. When are we going to hear from the president himself?
The president has put a statement out earlier in the week when we were on the trip, and he stands by that statement.
He's ignored shouted questions for 2 straight days. He's the president of the United States, the leader of the Republican Party. I think a lot of people want to hear from him.
I'm aware of all of those qualifications of the president, and it's actually my job to come out here and answer questions on his behalf, which I'm doing, which I've done, and which he has done repeatedly over the last 12 days while we were on a trip across Asia. So to act like he hasn't answered questions is just silly.
Senator Al Franken should step down? What does he think of Senator Al Franken?
Sorry, Kristen, I'm going to move around.
On the other side of the aisle, does the president have a response to the allegations against Senator Al Franken and also the mistrial over Senator Baum?
On Senator Franken, it appears that the Senate is looking into that, which they should, and we feel that's an appropriate action. I haven't asked him about Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, before the president left for his trip to Asia, he called on the Justice Department to look into the Democrats in that situation, as he put it. And then days later, the Attorney General asked special prosecutors to look into the Uranium One allegations in the Clinton Foundation. Did the president cross any lines or try to influence the Justice Department and the Attorney General to look into the situation of the Democrats?
Look, the president hasn't directed any investigation or the appointment of a special counsel. In fact, he said publicly that he hasn't been involved with that, and that's entirely up to the Department of Justice. Brian.
Thank you very much. Going back to Russia just a bit, when he said that he spoke with Putin and he believed that Putin meant what he said, in other words, there was no collusion with the government.
He actually said he believed that Putin believed what he said, okay, and that he wasn't going to get into an argument with him over that when they had bigger things like North Korea, like the issues in Syria that they needed to deal with and work together on.
Okay, so the question being, he's always maintained that it was the Democrats who colluded with Russia. Is he saying that Putin exonerated the Democrats?
Look, the president still firmly believes that there was collusion with the Democrats during this election process, but again, he's not going to get into the back and forth with a world leader that he needs to work with and wants to work with in order to deal with some of the big and serious things that are facing our country right now.
Thank you. Follow-up.
Sorry, Brian, I'm going to move ahead. Francesca.
Thank you, Sarah. China has announced that it's sending a special envoy to North Korea tomorrow. The president was just in Beijing. Is that something that the president talked to President Xi about while he was there? Is that something that the president favors?
The president certainly favors China taking a greater role in putting maximum pressure on North Korea. This is one of the things that he and President Xi spoke extensively about over the course of our visit, and certainly any effort in order to denuclearize the peninsula there in North Korea, then China participating in that, the president certainly supports those efforts.
Sorry, and I have another question about China and trade. Yesterday in his remarks, the president said that we can no longer tolerate unfair trading practices that steal American jobs, wealth and intellectual property. The days of the United States being taken advantage of are over. He specifically mentioned China as he said all of those words. Does the president still believe that China is raping the U.S. economy?
Look, the president knows that there hasn't been a fair and reciprocal trade with China. He doesn't think that we've had great deals in place with China, and he's been very clear, and he was very clear directly with President Xi, which he'll continue to be, that we want to make sure that Americans and American workers in particular are getting the best deal and the best pieces possible. That was one of the reasons that he worked to secure massive deals of totaling over $250 billion while he was in China. He's going to continue to push for those types of efforts. Jeff.
Sure, I'd like to ask you about two other topics. The tax bill was passed by the House today. One of the things that the tax bill does is increase the deficit by $1.5 trillion. I know the White House has argued that that will be paid by growing the economy. But if the economy doesn't grow, how do you square that with the Republican view or general principle that the deficits are bad? And on a second...
Right, I mean, I just disagree with the premise of the question. We do expect the economy to grow. We've seen that happen over the last 10 months, and we expect that to continue.
But are you confident that the economy will grow consistently enough to cover these costs that otherwise would lead to a ballooning deficit?
Yes, that's been part of our process and part of what we've laid out from the beginning. We expect this to be consistent, and that's certainly what we hope for. That's one of the reasons that the president continues to push for things like deregulation that have helped boost the economy. He's going to continue to push things that help do that and accomplish that, and we feel confident moving forward.
Yeah.
Take one last question, Eamon.
Thanks, Sarah. So Senator Johnson, Republican, has raised some questions about the fairness of the tax proposal, particularly the disparity between corporate and individuals and the way they're big corporations and regional corporations and the way they're treated as well. So the question is, what concessions is the White House prepared to make to Senator Johnson? And if you do make concessions to him, are you worried that other Republicans will demand their own concessions on issues of importance to them, and you'll have just a revolving door of senators who want something from you in this bill?
I think that's something for the members of the Senate to work through. Certainly not something the president is getting into the necessarily the back and forth of that conversation at this point in time. Again, he spoke with Senator Johnson. He supports the priorities. He wants to work with members of the Senate to bring them together to make sure that we pass historic tax cuts and tax reform.
Did you offer Senator Johnson anything when they spoke?
No, but he did encourage him to get on board and support the tax reform package. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be around the rest of the afternoon.